This podcast is offered through the Sacred Community Project, an interspiritual collective working to lower the barriers of access to contemplative and devotional practices. Through the universal teachings of love, service, remembrance, and truth, SCP utilizes modern technology to promote eternal values. Learn more at sacredcommunityproject.org.
Thank you guys both for joining. I've been really excited to be able to talk to both of you, and it really is a dream conversation for me. I mean, you guys are both friends, mentors, and really interesting and beautiful roles in my life. I'm very excited that we get to sit down and do this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
For anybody who hasn't had the chance to meet Dassi Ma or Rita, we'll start with Dassi Ma, one of the quiet rock stars of the satsang. So Dassi Ma lived with and served as Ram Dass's chief caregiver for Dassi Ma. How many years was that now?
15 years.
What was kind of the motivation and inspiration to begin your spiritual path?
Dassi?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was brought up Roman Catholic, 16 years of Catholic education. And there was a period in my life where I just turned off to all religion. Then in the late 80s, I found my way into Zen and started reading spiritual works. And someone gave me a tape of Ram Dass. And I listened to that tape and it just changed my entire life. Just listening to the tape. I, sat in my car for, an hour and 15 minutes just listening to it. And back then I didn't even realize whether he was living or dead. I was so far remote. Then I found out that he was living. I got his books. I signed up for a lecture he was giving in Washington the next month, and for a week retreat in Omega in July. And then all my vacation I would use to go to Ram Dass retreats. Started helping out a little bit, and basically that was how I made the transition to spirituality.
Was there kind of a catalyst that reopened that door, or how did that happen?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there are a few things in my life: death, medical condition. They were truly catalyst. And then finding Zen, there was so much peace in that. And and also, believe it or not, Wayne Dyer's work, he was starting to get into spirituality a little bit. So that was a little bit of a catalyst as well.
I mean, you mentioned Omega in Washington. Where were you living, and kind of what were you doing in your life at the time?
I was living in the Philadelphia area, and I was a human resources director for a fairly large organization. And that was my career.
I mean, that's a bit of a jump.
A little bit.
I mean, you kind of became the human resource at the end of the day.
I guess you could say that.
And Rita, for you, I mean, I understand that your kind of jump in was a lot younger.
I got the book Be Here Now, my senior year in high school. Talking about funny, when I started reading all the books that were recommended in the back of the book and realized that was the real education. I used to talk to Maharaji in the book, telling him, I want this. And I came to know that the author was going to be teaching a class at Naropa Institute in 1974. So I made arrangements to go there after I graduated. Then while there, I met KK Shaw, our dear KK, and he was invited to India.
By KK?
Yeah. So in 75, I made it to India.
What kind of invitation was it, if you don't mind?
KK and I used to meet up before class, and there was this bridge that I used to walk across to get there. It was a river bridge, and I had wanted to show him. So I walked him over there, and he said, "When are you coming to India?"
Hmm.
And it was like a ping ball. It was like, "Oh, I read Be Here Now. You don't have to go to India." Bang, bang, bang.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that was the beginning. And then he wrote a letter after he left. And then he wrote another letter. You know how he loves to write the letters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And for people who might not know who KK is, could you help explain?
KK was a very, very dear friend of Ram Dass's. And not only was a friend of Ram Dass's, but he just loved the Westerners beyond anything that it was just unbelievable how much he loved all of us. And he was such a devotional human being. And he was a rascal, badmash. Maharaji loved him very much. Mother loved him very much. He was loved and he loved.
So you've just finished the Naropa Institute course. You end up going over to India. What were kind of those initial impressions when you got there, and what started developing for you?
KK took me to meet Ma first, and it was just KK and Mother and I. And I remember sitting there and just, I couldn't help but cry. I was a little bit of a crybaby back in those days because my heart was just, my mind was being blown and my heart was being open. And I just felt like I was in front of somebody, sitting with somebody that knew my heart for the first time ever. And that's a game changer. The first time I went to India, you could only get a 3 months visa. I was asked to stay and go on a pilgrimage, so I extended my visa to 6 months. And then from then on out, I never stayed less than 6 months in India.
Who did you go on the pilgrimage with?
Mother invited me, Ma invited me, and I went with all the Mais and Vinod, and we had a bus, and we went to Neem Karoli, and then we went to Vrindavan.
I mean, I think a lot of people know Siddhi Ma kind of later in her life where she wasn't really taking trips with people. So what was that early relationship like within those first couple of years?
I remember, having arrived there in 75, and Maharaji left his body in 73. I don't know if it was somewhere in the early 70s. Mother had said to somebody she was sitting outside in the back, talking to somebody and saying, "This is the first time I'm talking about Maharaji, and it's the first time I'm sitting outside and not in the back." So I saw Mother start coming out, you might say.
And what did that kind of look like?
Very sweet. We had a lot of times to sit around and talk about Maharaji. We looked at photo books a lot. We had long darshans in the evenings, all the Mas, and Mother would walk around and see things that needed to be done. And it was just a really sweet, beautiful time.
So I'm thinking about, Dassi Ma, you met Siddhi Ma as well, and were there with Ram Dass on his last trip to India.
That is correct. Back in 2004.
Had you met Siddhi Ma before then?
No, I had not. I heard beautiful things about her, but I had never met her. It was just absolutely beautiful. I felt more peaceful there than I ever have in my life. I was there for 3 weeks, or just about 3 weeks. And once I got there, I just felt so contented. And just being in her presence was, electrifying. I didn't even want to go to the gate. I just wanted to be there in the courtyard, or be wherever. It was just a beautiful experience.
I was there. It was beautiful.
So, I mean, there's this kind of final meeting of these two beings, at least in the body, who both of you were so closely associated with. So what was that whole experience and trip like?
The trip was just amazing. Were probably about 10 or 12 of us that met in Delhi, and we drove down in a bus to Kenchi, and we were greeted by Rita as we arrived late at night, and she was there to greet us, and she was just so welcoming, and I believe that was the first time I ever met Rita, although I heard a lot of good things about her. And just being there, it was fabulous. It was just fabulous. They put 8 of us in this big room where the kirtan wallas usually sleep, with mats on the floor, and it was just amazing. It was just amazing. And Ram Dass would sit out on his little porch, and we would meet there during the day. Ma would call us in for darshan, and understand we had more darshan than typical people do.
It's true. And the unique thing about it is that Mother put them all in the same room, big room, as a family. Usually they're separating men and women, but she chose to put them all in a room as a family. And I thought that was really unique. And they got a lot of attention, a lot of prasad. Mother would come into their rooms.
Yes.
The room, not rooms, but Mother would come in the room and make sure that the prasad was there. And
we had darshan just about every day. We were told that we needed to get up at 4:30 in the morning and be out in the courtyard, and that we might be lucky enough to see Ma
out in the temple area.
Yeah.
Really?
So we did that every morning.
So was that her kind of typical routine of getting up that early to go do
darshan in the temple? Yeah, in the area.
Interesting. Do you have any kind of insight into like spiritual practices that she was involved with?
Yes, she wrote Ram Ram on a daily basis.
Didn't she take over Maharaji's diary?
That's right. She wrote Ram Ram in a diary every day, sometimes twice a day. Even to the very, very end of her life, she was doing that.
She took us one day into Maharaji's office and showed us the book where Maharaji wrote Ram 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 in his diary every day, and she showed us how she continued.
Maharaji gave Ma a sandalwood mala bead, and she used to do her sandalwood mala, and it was lost, and Jaya couldn't find it anywhere, and we looked everywhere, and it was just gone. So that practice of Mother's was done.
Interesting. So she never just picked it up with a different set of beads. That was it. The whole loss and change thing, I think, is definitely one of the great mysteries of this whole path. With Ram Dass's passing and with the closeness that both of you have had over the years with him, what has that process been like for you?
It was such a loss. Even now, I get choked up. Just how much he influenced my own life, and then to see how much he influenced so many people's lives. It's just, I feel honored to have had him as a teacher and a mentor.
For decades, Ram Dass was intrigued by death and reincarnation and the process of dying. And we've had many conversations about how he wanted to go and how he wanted joy, and he didn't want heaviness around him when that time came. It was just, a beautiful experience. Just last night, I had a dream again of that last day of his life and how he didn't struggle. He surrendered into death. There was no pushing back at all. And, it is very, very sad that we don't have his beautiful presence here, but it's also joyful. And he was so ready to go.
And he died like his teachings. He continues showing us the way.
Totally. Going on that topic of a living teaching, we've for years and years and years we've heard and studied him and what he thought and felt this process was going to be like for himself. Witnessing it, what was that experience like for you, or were there any kind of remarkable moments within that process that really stood out?
Let me think. The whole thing was remarkable. He was getting weaker and weaker as the weeks and months passed in 2019. Just his willingness to go to the next plane of consciousness, to find out. It was really a mystery for him, and just watching him not resist it was beautiful. Was beautiful. It was the last day was he woke up and all his vital signs were totally off. And we sat there the whole day, and he was just getting weaker and weaker. And I remembered his wishes that we all be joyful. He didn't want a lot of extraneous types of stimulus during that period. He didn't want music. He didn't want, a lot of pictures around. He didn't want a lot of people around either.
Right.
And it was just wonderful to watch him slowly go to the transition. He was having trouble breathing, so Matthew and Govinda went out to get oxygen tanks, and he was just, he was still conscious the whole time. Didn't speak. I don't remember him speaking that day, but he responded if you asked him a question, and he could indicate whether it was yes or no. But it was so peaceful.
It's nice to hear.
One of the things that I've noticed from talking with all the caregivers is that every single one of us thought that we were going there kind of to be there for that moment. One of the things that I did get to be there for, which just will always stand out in my mind, were those days immediately following, and the wishes that he had pertaining to his body being laid out so that people would be able to come and pay their respects, but also, as it was written on the door, that it was part of the teachings. And there was that immediate, just even right after the moment of death, all right, here we go, here's the teaching. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to what the intention of that time was, and just kind of the process that the house went through in honoring those wishes and being part of that teaching.
One of Ram Dass's wishes was that the caregivers wash and dress him after he died.
Did you get to do that, Hari?
I wasn't there for the initial wash and dress, but I got to be there for all the times kind of after that, and the preserving of the body, and what was it, Dassi Ma, 72 hours that he was laid out to for the public?
It ended up to be a little bit more than 72 hours, I think.
Yep.
But legally it's 72 hours, yes. But it was so beautiful to see the caregivers that were here, Matthew and Lakshman and Krishna Prem and Christopher and Bodhi B, who owns the deaf store. He came over and he helped too. And it was just a beautiful experience. It was so loving. And John Empey was also here during that period of time.
Yeah.
So that was just amazing to watch. Yeah. I wouldn't say it was joyful, but it was heavenly.
Yeah.
Loving awareness.
And it was so interesting when the spaces that were held kind of in the different parts of the house, right, where we had the quiet meditative space up in his study with the body, and then for, as I remember, a lot of the day, a full house with kirtan going on down in the puja room. um,
Yes.
and you know, it was kind of the like choose your own adventure, like what do you need at this moment.
Mm,
I mean, there's kind of those times where I think people just needed release, and needed to sing and needed to celebrate. And then there were times where you needed to go and sit with the body of your teacher
yeah.
and do whatever process that was that needed to happen. And I think the thing that really hit me too was I knew how much Ram Dass meant to really a select group of people. And a thing that blew me away was and how deep that connection was. I mean, Rita, you were talking about how with Siddhi Ma knowing your heart, and
Mm,
then just the feelings of when Ram Dass passed, and the level of just honor and deep respect of that moment. And that made sense to me for a lot of the people who I knew were either in the house or just really close to Ram Dass or his close friends. The thing that I really didn't expect was the immediate outpour, after his death, of realizing that my experience and depth of reverence to him as my teacher, and somebody who just completely transformed my life, extended so far beyond to just tens of thousands,
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of people who felt that deep.
It's like this, Hari. Everybody, I think, can remember what they were doing and where they were when they heard about Ram Dass passing away.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's a monument moment in people's lives.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing about Ram Dass's passing is that for the last 12 months, from January or February, the end of January of 2019, he had many scary moments and
Mm.
many, many infections, and he had some hospitalizations. So we in the house were going through many deaths through the whole year. So when it
Right.
happened, I think that helped us to be a little bit more prepared. And knowing that he was so excited to go on this journey was helpful too.
And to have someone like Dassi Ma and you guys surrounding this space, that's really made all of us feel really good that couldn't be here.
Mm. Yeah. I have just a tremendous amount of thanks. And I mean, Dassi Ma, just God bless you for I
Bravo.
mean, so you have Ram Dass, who we've already talked about the kind of the type of connection that you would have to him. And then you add in the fact of your proximity and how close you've been for 15 years. Now you have that death, and now you have hundreds of people entering your house. You have I'm trying to think about how many people just at the time, immediately after, came to stay at the house that then you were helping feed and shelter. I'm going to guess that there were probably 15 people there. I do, just on behalf of everybody, just want to take a moment to just say a huge thank you for the strength and love that went into that, to be able to provide an opportunity for people to come and have this type of closure and experience and closeness of these kind of final times and moments with his body.
Mhm. You know, Hari, one of the things that really uh, was amazing to me was the all of the caregivers who showed up
Mm.
immediately after he died.
Yeah.
You just showed up,
Yep.
and you
Yeah.
you were just amazing. You were here, you chanted, you were upstairs, whatever needed to be done, you did. You were able to grow, have a closer bond.
Yeah.
Not that there wasn't close before,
Hmm.
And then I remember you were thinking about, we can't let the house go. This is
Mm,
where Ram Dass's essence is. And
yeah.
you guys called a meeting. And at that point, we had no thought of staying here in the house. Um, and you were so impassioned during that meeting. It was like, yes, we can do this. And that's the reason we're still here today, that we still have Ram Dass's ashes here and that we have a garden for him. And his presence is so strong upstairs. It's just amazing. And we owe it all to you.
The caretakers.
Thank you for that, and thank you for being the living life force that's carrying that forward, and just a beautiful transition for people who haven't heard. The house is being preserved and protected and acting as a living temple. And Dassi Ma, would you speak a little bit as to what Hanuman Maui is and some
Mhm.
of your plans for that?
So after that meeting, I contacted Stever Dahlman, whose desire was to have a Hanuman temple here on Maui, and had a small apartment in Paia where he was having weekly gatherings, and he commissioned this beautiful Hawaiian wood carver to make a Hawaiian wooden Hanuman, and was absolutely beautiful. It's now in front of our puja table. Stever said, "Yes, that sounds like a pretty good idea to me." So with the two of us combined, we were able to continue here at the house. We now call it the Hanuman Maui Ram Dass Loving Awareness Sanctuary, and we're really excited about it.
What are some of the kind of the future plans of
Hmm.
either people being able to come, or how is that looking?
Yes, after the cessation of the coronavirus, we will start having weekly chanting sessions, regular meditation. We will offer private retreats. We will have some teachers come and give group teachings, and also,
Savo workshops.
yeah.
Hmm. And for people who are looking to either help support or follow you on social media, how would they do that?
Well, we have a new YouTube station that just went up thanks to Stever and Matthew. We have a couple of videos on there, and we just started a Facebook page for Hanuman Maui and also Instagram. We do have a website, and that is hanumanmaui.org.
And is there a way that you can receive donations at the moment?
Yes, at the moment, you can go into the website and then click the link and you can give a donation, or you can send a check as well.
Perfect. An absolutely beautiful project, and I hope that if you're listening, you take a moment to check out the website and learn more about what's going on and the vision for this project, and that you lend your support so that Ram Dass's house is able to continue to stand as really a sanctuary for loving awareness. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to, in the years of serving him as a caregiver, what that relationship looked like, and just kind of the effect that had on your being, and things that you saw change within yourself over that time.
Mm. Well, certainly I felt extremely blessed to be able to serve him. Initially, as I mentioned earlier, I used all my vacation time to go to his retreats or programs, wherever it was, whether it was Costa Rica or Canada. When he went to Brazil, I made sure I went to Brazil, and went to India when he went in 2004. And I started to take photos, and then I was editing the cassettes and transferring them to CDs at night This is like 10, 11 o'clock at night. I would be doing that. And I was so in awe of Ram Dass. I couldn't hardly even talk to him. I was so much in awe. And he's such an easy person to talk to. Yeah. So when I arrived at the house in 2005, Rita was here. She
That's
was
when
just
we met.
ending. Yeah. So she showed me the ropes, and she was a great teacher. But I was a little nervous at first. And then, it just, the relationship grew. Yeah, he was such a beautiful human being. And every once in a while, we would do something that would totally upset him. And he'd let us know in no uncertain words. He would say something, and it was like, oh my God. I would, you'd feel like it was the end of the world.
Oh yeah. I remember the first time that he yelled at me, and you would, it was my second day at the house, and you told me we're doing a cleanse. You said, here comes a little 23-year-old kid, day 2, and you go, the whole Ram Dass and the whole house is going on a cleanse. Do you want to do it with us? And I'm just like, sure. But I mean, it was really strict, and like a week and a half into it, I remember he just really laid into me one morning, and I went down into my room and I'm just crying, and you came in and sat on my bed with me and put your arm around me, and you said something that just lasted with me forever. You said, Ram Dass is human, and he still has a lot of stuff there with anger, but the really beautiful thing is when he gets angry, it passes right through.
Yeah, like that.
And that he moves on, and it doesn't linger there. And that was the first time I had ever seen anybody really embody an emotion fully and then have it move through. And the other place that I really saw that come to light was when he would cry. And that he would cry with his full body. Yeah. But it didn't last very long. It would be like 10 seconds, sometimes shorter, 3 seconds, but it would be the deepest sob, and then it would be gone.
Yeah. Actually, that was a very healthy relationship lesson that I learned, is that when he would get angry, and then he was able to just let it go. And it was interesting for me to see that there were no resentments, nothing later that was going to come back. And he might have been right, he might not have been right, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he was just able to just move on. And that was very healthy reflection for me to experience.
Yeah.
Initially, if I did something that he didn't approve of, I would feel bad for so long. And then towards the end, it was like, okay, I got it. Won't do that. Yeah.
Right. Rita, did you ever have any experiences like that with Siddhi Ma?
It's the same thing. She would get angry and let it go. Just like boom, and then gone. One time we had an elderly pujari, and he misbehaved in some way. I'm not sure exactly what he did. He was neglected and giving prasad. He didn't do his job properly. And mother went out, and I think that she became like 10 feet at the time. He was cowering, and I was behind her like, whoa, what am I witnessing? And then poof, it was gone, finished. She came back, and I'm sure he learned his lesson. And at the same time, when I've been yelled at from her, I feel this tremendous amount of love. It was like, yell at me anytime you want.
Right. I think for me, with that tremendous amount of love, it just, my experience with it was, it just felt like it even hurt more.
Yeah.
Somehow I had the ability to sneak up on Ram Dass, even when I was trying to be as noisy as I could, to not do it. And I startled him one day and pulled, there was something stuck under his chair and I pulled it out. And what I didn't realize was he had lowered his chair all the way. So it was on the object so that when the object was removed, his whole chair dropped like 2 feet. And he freaked out and he just, Jesus Christ. And then he lifted his finger and waved it in my face and just went, God damn you. God damn you. I remember I just looked and stared at him. I said, do you mean to say that? You just cursed me. Like, will you take that back? And I think he huffed on it for another minute, but then it just popped back up. But oh my God, I remember just like it was almost like you just are staring at a truck coming at you. And yeah, the dealing with anger at those heightened moments. I mean, especially when there was so much physical contact with us. I mean, anytime he's going in and out of his wheelchair, anytime he's going in and out of bed, anytime he's getting dressed, anytime he's going to the bathroom. I mean, you have that caregiver in your face picking you up and helping you with these transfers, and sometimes they didn't always go well, and sometimes that could be injury, or that could just be, I don't know, just coming up short. I think that was definitely one of the most interesting parts of that relationship too, was learning how to deal with that feeling of coming up short and then moving on and letting it run through.
Yeah. There have been some beautiful caregivers who cared so much about doing a beautiful job and being helpful. And they would really go out of their way. And they're the ones he gave it to the hardest.
I mean, it was great that he set us up, though, with the idea of fierce grace. I mean,
Yeah,
at least there was a little bit of groundwork.
for sure. And I really felt bad for the caregivers coming in the last couple of years, where his body was becoming weaker and weaker, and it became more and more difficult to do the transfer. You know, as Trudy Goodman called the caregivers the super monkeys, and super monkeys they are.
Beautiful group of beings. I mean,
For sure.
One of my favorite photos, and maybe we can even post it as the photo for the podcast, was that last trip to Taos.
Oh yes.
And where there was caregivers through the decades. There must have been 15 people in that photo who spanned probably
15 years.
15 plus years. That Taos trip was...
Tell something personal.
Oh, you should definitely tell something personal. Come on, baby.
I'm sorry. I didn't know you heard that.
And definitely don't work on those whisper skills. I want to...
Well, when Dassi Ma arrived and it was time for myself to leave, Ram Dass said, "Would you be my?" He said to her, "Would you be my caretaker?" And Dassi Ma said, "Yes, I'll do it for 2 months without any pay."
Yep.
To see that if you really wouldn't want me to be here. And when I left, when I heard that, I just said, she's going to stay forever. I don't know. Just to hear something like that was such a beautiful Savite thing to hear.
With that, asking to be the caregiver, if you would share the story of how you got your name.
I had a few other spiritual names, even one from Mother, which I really loved. But one morning, 2006, I got up, I was in the kitchen, and I looked at the puja, and Ram Dass was sitting there. Back then, there was a possibility he could get out of bed by himself. But at that point, it was a possibility for him to do that. But he hardly ever did. He came rolling over to the island in the kitchen, and he said, I had 2 dreams last and your name came to me. The first dream was Dassi, and the second was Ma. And it was my heart just melted.
Sweet.
And I knew that was my name.
Totally.
Yeah. And he was, he had tears in his eye.
He was the messenger.
Had you asked him for a name?
No.
Or just came up? You've had a really interesting history with dreams, though, in Ram Dass and Maharaji.
There was one dream I had shortly after he had his stroke. I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was such a real dream. I haven't had one since. And in the dream, I was caregiving for Ram Dass. And at this point, I was, in human resources and, into my career. But it was, I just woke up and I was crying and sweating. And I remember going into work the next day and looking to see if there was a possibility for me to take an early retirement. And there, was, sometime later, actually being a caregiver.
I mean, come on, doesn't get much better than that.
For sure.
Did you have a dream with him with falling out of bed as well?
I had a reality of him falling out of bed.
Well.
Oh, yes. There was. I thought he was, in my dream, I thought he was calling, and I woke up and he was on the floor.
For people who don't know the house, you're on a completely different level with probably a, 60-second walk to go get up to him. And I was just thinking about when you were talking about his ability to get in and out of bed independently, and then how that slowly started to shift. And I think one of the interesting things was with Ram Dass, his independence was important.
Absolutely.
To watch what happened with that over the years as he became more and more dependent on the people that were around him. I remember when I was there, when he was talking about his death, that I think he even said that he didn't want anybody around, or maybe one person. And then when he actually ended up dying, that things had changed so much. That were there a whole number of people really at that moment?
I believe there were about 4 of us, 5. He actually indicated it would be all right for a few of his close friends to be there. Malik Cotter was there, who had come over to visit him on Sunday. Earlier in the day, his good friend, Dr. Haddad, was there. And after he passed, he came over very quickly after he died. Ramesh was there. He was visiting. Christopher and me. But he did change. For him to become totally dependent on someone else was a difficult task for him. And it took him a long time to become comfortable in being dependent. And he worked on it. He wrote the book, How Can I Help? And as he would say, how can you help me? Yeah. But he did it. He was able to do it. Initially, when Rita was here, she would help him up. And I helped him up for the first 4 or 5 years. And then it came to the point where I could no longer do it. But that transition to becoming more dependent was beautiful to watch.
Yeah, that was actually one of his teachings as well, is to allow yourself to be helped. It's easier on the caretaker and oneself as well.
I loved his quote where he was talking about his car, and he says, "And now I can't. I had a sports car, and now I can't shift my car, and I can either suffer at being somebody who can't drive a car, or I can enjoy being chauffeured.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
taught us so many things. That was about grieving, right? Just what we can grieve in our lives.
Yeah. So, Rita, we've talked a fair amount about Ram Dass's passing, but with Siddhi Ma passing a couple years before, I'm curious what that process was like for you, and just what, if anything, you feel changed during that time.
Well, this is interesting, Harry, because this is something that I heard you say a little differently. But I realized that I didn't need to be with Mother when she
Mm.
passed away. It was
Hmm.
something that I felt like I had to grow into, is just really not needing to be there when she
Mm.
passed. It was part of actually me being adult around the whole thing.
Mm.
Um, she was old, and that made it feel a little better that she had to leave her body in that way. She did it so gracefully. I was with her in October. I'd left, and she passed away in December. Same thing. It's a loss. It's a loss to our planet. I continue growing in her love because she's taught me and raised me, and that just continues unfolding in me. And that's how I see her, is through my
Mm.
own life unfolding.
Mm. When I think about people who, so I mean, we have the group of people who were with Maharaji. And then we have subsequent groups, right? People
Mm-hmm.
who were with Siddhi Ma, people who were with Ram Dass. And I think one of the big struggle questions for people who weren't with Maharaji were, how do I feel that connection? How do I feel connected with that being? And for you, with the passing of Ram Dass and Siddhi Ma, what would you tell people who are looking to feel that connection?
I'll just say that there's many of people who never met Maharaji and his body, but they've had such vivid experiences of him, or just the feeling of him, that they didn't need to be with him in the body. And I think it's the same with Mother and with Ram Dass.
I know that one thing that Mother was all about, she was all about Maharaji. And I feel the same way about Ram Dass. Ram Dass was all about Maharaji.
Hmm.
So through those teachings in that path, we're under Maharaji's blanket. And people that want to arrive there, I think it's really, we have a lot of avenues now. We have Krishna Das, we have Jai, we have Kripa singing, we have all these people
Mm.
to awaken people to Maharaji's using all of us as instruments.
Mm.
Mm. Yes. I'm really excited about what Kripa is doing. And I think you guys are a fabulous group and
Mm.
fabulous human beings. And I think that just about every one of you has the ability to be great spiritual teachers. Every one of you.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, we learn from the best, and
Mm.
just uh, I think the most fun part of that relationship is that Muid had, or Krishna Prem now, had met Sitaram Das as he took over for Sitaram Das when he left the house, and moved on, and then I moved in eventually to be with Krishna Prem and Dassi Ma. But I had never actually met Sitaram Das, and really the whole the whole reason why we formed a band was because we ended up meeting at one of the Ram Dass legacy retreats, and that was the first time Sita Ram Dass and I had ever met, and we just fell in love with each other so hard, that we decided that we needed to figure out a way that we could hang out and be together, and we wanted it to be um in some way that, like, we could also be in service. Uh, and so we ended up deciding each one of us enjoys uh, chanting. So what if we found a way to sing together, and we could honor Ram Dass and Maharaji in that way. And then that really was the birth of the whole thing.
The great name too.
I think the thing that all of us, and it's really been my word of the year, of grace. And I hope to kind of, I don't know, the farther and farther I walked in on this path, the more and more it's just become apparent to me that it's grace.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
no
I
doubt.
just-
You're graced. You're graced. There's no doubt. All these guys are graced. We have Guru's Kripa. You can't dispute that.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, God, it's been a beautiful path.
Yeah.
And the more it's opened up, the more grace filled it feels.
Nice to hear that.
Yes.
Jumping back in time a little bit, I felt like kind of one of the last things that was kind of an uncompleted project for Ram Dass was the opening of the Taos Hanuman Temple. If you could talk about just the significance and what that moment was like.
Oh, with Ram Dass arriving it was dharmic. I can't explain it other than it was just a total universal, meant to be, right time, everything. Dharmic is how I would explain it.
Yeah, that it was absolutely amazing that he was able to go. He had a couple of hospitalizations and one infection after another. It was amazing that it was still living at that point. And I had mentioned that I was going to go. And shortly thereafter, he said, I'm going. Ram Dass had waited 43 years for the Hanuman that he helped design and went to India a few times to have it, put together, to have a permanent home.
To fly to America.
He stayed on the Taos Temple board until his death to make sure that a permanent place was made for Hanuman. And once he decided he was going to go, there was no way that we were going to keep him. And all his doctors said, "No, this is murder. You can't let this happen." Then finally you said, "No, Ram Dass is going." So we got tickets to go one way, and then people were saying, no, you have to get a private jet. So we looked into getting private jets, and then someone said, no, you can't take a private jet. You have to take the plane to Denver, and then from Denver, and the people were saying you'd have to drive down or you have to take the plane. It was unbelievable, the conversations that we've had. We have to have a respirator. We have to get this. And he was so joyful and happy. And I'm so glad he went.
Yeah.
And he was glad. The tears that came down when he saw that Hanuman in that beautiful temple were fantastic.
Yeah, well,
that was a moment of the golden ages.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just so many incredible I mean, if you want to see some of the joy, like find some of the videos and the photos from that temple opening, and Ram Dass feeling a lot of feels.
Look for it on the Maui website.
Yeah. And I mean, talk about remarkable too, when he asked his caregivers to lift him up out of his wheelchair so that he could touch Hanuman's foot.
Oh.
I mean, come on.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that was breathtaking.
It was breathtaking. Actually, I was standing a little bit in the back, and as soon as I saw him do that, I had to run to the front to be a part of it.
We decided that if Ram Dass went, we really had to protect him. And there's so many people in the Taos area that have long relationships with Ram Dass, but the only way he was he would have been able to get through it was for him to be guarded. So we had, whenever he went out, we had to push people to the side, not push, but
Move people aside.
yeah, Musa, yeah. And I know that there are some people in tasks that felt sad that they didn't get a chance to speak to him. And I felt bad about that. But we wanted him to get home alive.
Yeah.
And he was very sick when he got home.
Yeah, it was a vulnerable situation. Yeah.
From what I remember too, I mean, that plane ride seemed to take a lot of him out of him. He was joyous, but it seemed like he was in a weakened state even just during that visit.
And then the altitude
change was very significant for him. By the end, he had a fairly nice size fever, and he was an AFib, and we were lucky to get him home.
Jai Maharaj.
What was kind of the first moment for you or Maharaji Darshan, kind of where you knew you were home?
For me, the first time I heard Ram Dass, that was it. I was home. And the first time I saw Ram Dass, I sat down in my seat, I saw Ram Dass, and then I saw Maharaji. He turned into Maharaji and then back to Ram Dass. And that was it.
Yeah, that would do it. That's pretty wild. Wow.
Oh, there's so many, just just back to back to back. But I think maybe it was the darshan that I had of Maharaji. He wasn't in form, but he was speaking, and he had said that he had been with me from the beginning. And I think that was an awakening for me, that he had just done everything in my past up to until then, and he continues to do it. I think it was that moment of just realizing he was doing it all.
As two people who walked this path and so deeply for so long, if you could have people just understand one thing about either these beings or this path, what would that offering be?
I think mine would come from Ram Dass. Just our humanness, that we were born into a human body. We have these human tendencies, and we have the ability to realize. And we're all one big package in our own bodies. Our bodies are temples.
Yeah. The one great thing about Ram Dass was that he never really take himself seriously. And he had such a great sense of humor. And I love the way he used his stories.
Yes.
Where he really screwed up as teaching examples.
Yeah. I love that bit of when I think he was just using it as an opener at one point when he was talking about for so many years I've been huffing and puffing as hard as I could to get enlightened, and people just keep on thanking me for being so human. Yeah, I lived a long time with not being okay with myself, and that here's this person who I in a lot of ways idolized and just see as so far down the road, and he just keeps on telling me, like, you're beautiful, like, you're okay, it's all of it. It's like it's the parts that you like about yourself, and it's the parts that you don't really enjoy.
Plus, a gift that we've been given is this human birth. It's through the human birth we're able to have our contact with God and our self-realization.
Right.
Can't forget that part.
For me, one of the things that was significant was embracing his philosophy that it's all perfect. It's all perfect. The coronavirus is all perfect.
Yeah.
Everything is perfect.
Your resistance to the coronavirus. It's all perfect. I would love when he just would go through those levels. Thank you both so much for taking the time to talk with me and sharing your wisdom and really your life and heart.
You're going to be really good at this.
Going to be. He is.
No, I mean you're gonna start putting it out there and doing this. I think you're gonna be really good.
Well, thank you.
You are good
darling.
at it, like she said. But
Thank you so much, Hari.
We had a good closer, but the thing that why this is so important to me and like what gets me so jazzed up is we have just in our satsang, I've just experienced such a wealth and depth
For sure.
of spiritual practitioners and people who
sure.
have walked this journey in either a different path or maybe have had more time to get farther ahead and to be able to just tap into the wealth of love and devotion that really is this satsang and is this family. I think it's time for it to come forth.
You're right. You're definitely a good bunch.